0430 on the open ocean. The sky is black, the deck is slick, and deep inside a $13 billion warship, the galley lights are already on. The first batch of eggs is cracking. Industrial ovens roar to life. In less than 30 minutes, 2,000 sailors will expect breakfast, hot, fast, and on time. Because this isn't a hotel, it's a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, and it feeds more people per day than most hospitals. 6,000 men and women, 3 meals each, every day. No shortcuts, no excuses, no second chances. Before the jets launch, before the missiles arm, before the sun even rises. The ship's engine of morale is already running. It's not glamorous and it's not loud, but without it, nothing else works. The USS Gerald R. Ford is more than a warship. It's home to over 6,000 people, each one working, training, or launching missions across its 1,100-foot deck. And every one of them needs to eat, not occasionally, every day, without fail. The math adds up quickly. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner for every crew member totals more than 18,000 meals a day. That's not a culinary service, it's a moving supply chain designed to run with military precision. There are no takeout deliveries, no fresh runs to the store. Everything must be planned, preserved, prepared, and served while the ship is in motion, often hundreds of miles from the nearest port. Food doesn't just fill trays here, it keeps the entire operation on rhythm. It sharpens focus, breaks monotony, and reminds the crew there's still structure, even when the world outside is all ocean. Below the decks, storage runs deep. Walk-in freezers, temperature-controlled rooms, and racks of dry goods stretch across multiple levels. Some spaces feel like grocery aisles, others are built like vaults. But every square foot is calculated, balanced between inventory, weight, and ship operations. Inside the galley, the process never really stops. Preparation starts before dawn. The steam kettles are running. Stations rotate crews on schedule. And the team behind it all works with a quiet intensity that matches the flight deck above. There are no second chances. Meals aren't delayed, and timing matters. Because in a place where everything runs on coordination, food is no exception. Before the Gerald R. Ford leaves port, it loads enough food to feed a small town. Thousands of pounds of meat, produce, dry staples, and dairy products. The entire process takes hours and involves cranes, forklifts, pallets, and tight coordination between ship and shore. Each item is scanned, logged, and assigned a space. There's no margin for error, not when the nearest grocery store is 3,000 miles away. The Navy doesn't just load food, it prepares for weeks of autonomy at sea. That means accounting for shelf life, humidity, spoilage rates, special diets, and the available square footage below deck. Everything has to fit, and everything has to last. Once on board, ingredients disappear into the underbelly of the ship, into narrow corridors and steel chambers built for maximum storage. One deck down, you'll find walk-in freezers that hold thousands of pounds of frozen meals and meat. Nearby, chilled compartments keep milk, eggs, and produce at a constant temperature. Lower still, rows of dry storage lockers are packed with everything from bulk flour to coffee grounds to powdered drink mix. Each space is climate-controlled and labeled for fast access. Culinary teams memorize the layout because delays during prep hours aren't an option. Movement through these tight passageways isn't leisurely. It's timed, repetitive, and often done while the ship is pitching in open water. Eventually, some of that inventory runs low, but the Ford doesn't stop for groceries. It refuels and resupplies in motion, a process called underway replenishment. Supply ships meet the carrier mid-ocean, matching its speed while transferring pallets across a cable system stretched between the two vessels. Others use helicopters to lower cargo directly onto the flight deck. These operations require precise timing. A single shift in wind or current can send food or people into the sea. Managing all of this is the supply department, a division within the ship trained to track, rotate, and restock inventory with zero tolerance for waste. Their schedules are locked weeks in advance. Their charts track usage by the hour. And when they fall behind, the effects ripple across the entire crew. Feeding the ship isn't just a daily task. It's a logistical engine running in parallel with every mission, launch cycle, and deployment timeline. Keep it running, and everything else stays in sync. The galley never stops. While most of the ship sleeps, the day's first trays are already being loaded. By 0400, ovens are preheated, kettles are steaming, and prep lines are running full tilt. Feeding 6,000 people isn't about recipes, it's about rhythm, repetition, and timing. Each meal begins hours before it's served. There's no luxury of cooking to order. Everything is prepared in bulk, from scratch, on a clock that can't be missed. Scrambled eggs are made by the gallon. Loaves of bread are baked in trays, not pans. Even coffee is brewed in units that could supply a small cafe if that cafe floated in the middle of the ocean and fed 800 people before dawn. At the heart of it are the culinary specialists, enlisted sailors trained not just to cook, but to operate a production system. They work in shifts around the clock, cycling through tasks like prep, cooking, serving, and cleaning. Their gear includes industrial steam kettles, tilt skillets, conveyor ovens, and mixers large enough to make 100 pounds of dough at a time. Everything has to be cleaned, logged, and maintained daily. A broken appliance doesn't just slow the meal, it breaks the system. Space is tight, timelines are tighter, and the mission can't wait. Each galley feeds hundreds in a short window, and then resets for the next meal. Breakfast leads to lunch. Lunch folds into dinner. By the time midnight rations begin, the cycle has already turned over again. This isn't cafeteria work, it's an operation within the operation, one that powers pilots, engineers, officers, and deckhands alike. No matter what happens above deck, the food still comes out on time, and it's the same team behind every tray. Part 5. The people behind the food. The sailors who prepare food on an aircraft carrier don't launch jets or steer the ship, but without them, no one else on board can function. They work in hot, confined spaces with tight schedules and no room for error, and yet everything, like from flight operations to shift turnovers, depends on the meals they produce 3 times a day. On the Gerald R. Ford, more than 100 sailors are assigned to food operations. They rotate through long shifts, often beginning before 3 a.m., handling everything from prep work and baking to sanitation and meal service. Each task is structured. Each timeline is exact. This isn't restaurant cooking. It's a system built for scale, speed, and survival. There's no room for improvisation. If breakfast is late, the launch schedule falls behind. If dinner runs short, morale takes a hit. Even a single disruption can ripple through the day's operations. But they keep moving, day after day, meal after meal. There's pride in the routine. Even without fanfare, even without recognition, they show up and execute. They feed the entire chain of command, from junior enlisted to commanding officers. Every job, every rank, every shift. The food is the one thing that touches everyone on board, and the people behind it know exactly how much that matters. They don't ask for thanks, just clean trays, empty plates, and enough time to reset before the next line forms. Most days at sea blur together. There are no weekends, no holidays, no easy way to tell a Tuesday from a Sunday. But every now and then something changes, and it usually starts in the galley. When the 4th of July hits in the middle of the Pacific, the crew doesn't stop working. Jets still launch, drills still run, but for a few hours the mess decks smell like burgers and ribs. There's corn on the cob, watermelon, maybe even a sheet cake painted with red, white, and blue. These moments matter more than they seem. Culinary teams work ahead to make these meals happen. They prep for days, pulling frozen steaks, thawing desserts, coordinating decorations. It's not a luxury, it's a signal. A reminder that time still moves, even out here, that someone thought about the crew and carved out space for them to breathe. It's not just holidays. Promotion days, Steel Beach picnics, the first meal after weeks at sea. Even something as simple as a fresh-baked cookie tray on a stormy night can lift the mood across an entire watch rotation. The food itself isn't always special, but the act of serving it with intention, that changes things. On land, a hot meal is routine. Out here, it can feel like a reset button, a soft edge in a hard place. A brief moment when the ship feels less like a machine and more like a home. On a warship, failure doesn't come with a warning, and when it hits the galley, everything else starts to feel it. A broken steam kettle during breakfast rush means eggs don't get cooked. That delay backs up the serving line, which delays shift turnover, which then ripples through flight operations, maintenance crews, and watch rotations. It starts small, a late tray, a cold meal, a missing ingredient, but out here, small things multiply fast. Sometimes it's equipment failure, sometimes it's human error. A freezer door left ajar overnight can spoil a full day's worth of inventory. A miscalculation in weekly planning can drain supplies days before the next replenishment. If rough seas delay a supply ship, everyone tightens their belts. Literally. There's no pause button, no store down the street. The culinary team has to improvise on the fly. That might mean rebuilding the entire menu based on what's still viable, or reassigning stations to work around a failed piece of equipment. In some cases, it means cooking with one hand on the rail while the ship rocks through open water. But the pressure doesn't show. Not if the team is trained right. They reset, reorganize, adapt. Because if the food line stops, morale drops. And morale on a carrier is as critical as fuel in the tanks. Every sailor can handle tough conditions. They expect it. But even the most disciplined crew notices when something's off in the galley. And when it stays off too long, it gets harder to hold everything else together. On the surface, it's just food. But on a carrier, it's everything. It's fuel, yes, calories in, energy out. But it's also timing, structure, familiarity in a place that offers very little of it. It's the one thing that connects the entire crew, from the air boss to the lowest ranking sailor on mess duty. It's not glamorous. No one gets medals for perfect lasagna. But when meals are on time, hot and consistent, the rest of the ship stays in rhythm. Pilots launch on schedule. Crews rotate without friction. Morale stays level. The work gets done. And when things get hard, when the sea is rough, the hours are long, and the mission feels endless, a good meal doesn't fix it. But it helps. For the sailors who prepare it, the job is repetitive, unseen. But it's also disciplined, essential, and built on pride. Because every tray they serve isn't just food, it's momentum. And on a $13 billion warship carrying 6,000 people through open ocean, momentum is what keeps everything moving forward.